Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Lori, to you.
Hello, Lauren, and how are you on this August day?
I know I'm doing well. It's interesting you say August, and it's like we're almost halfway through August already. It's
I know,
insane.
I was going to actually bring up something while we're waiting for people to log in that has absolutely nothing to do with anything we ever talk about or finance. It actually has to do with airwaves. How about that? Airwaves.
Okay.
So the reason being is August is the big travel time, right? And I get a lot of questions from people about the ability to get airwaves to do Zoom calls and stuff like that. So I have this really cool thing that I found that I was going to tell people, and they can just go research it on their own. Unfortunately, I only know how to tell you about it on an iPhone. Okay. But it's really kind of cool. You know how sometimes you worry that you don't have enough airwaves to run, the computer and Zoom? Well,
Mhm.
there's ways, and many of you guys probably already know this, but there's ways you can use your phone to check. Other than I got 1 bar, 2 bars, which isn't a real good check, you can check the exact measurement of your airwaves. And so the other phones have a different way of doing it. But literally, what happens is I go in on my phone and I act like I'm making a phone call, right? And then I don't think this will come up on my phone because of the light, but I type in asterisk 3001 pound 1234 pound asterisk, and it sends me to a data dashboard within the phone. And then I can extract from that data dashboard a number, and that number I can put in a graph, and it gives me a yellow, green, red signal telling me exactly where it is. So why am I bringing this up? For any of you guys that are going on vacation and you need to suddenly get on a Zoom call or something, you can literally drive in the area, do this, and see which place has the best signal. So if you need any more info on that, I found that out a long time ago, and I've been asked that question so many times this month. And with it being August and summer, that's my travel advice. I'm giving airwave travel advice now.
That's amazing. I've never heard of that.
I
That's
didn't
super
either
cool.
till I did a lot of research, because I thought, how could I know? And I test it all the time, so I know what numbers will work for me, what numbers won't, what numbers I need to maybe do this or that. And so
Mhm.
it's just an ability to have more control over those
Mhm.
things we can't control, which is everything.
I
Back to you,
mean,
Lauren.
you said it. It is
Kick us
everything
off
for
here,
sure.
Lauren.
Well, I guess with that, I should go ahead and get started. For our frequent flyers, good morning to you. Thank you for coming back again and again and again. Today, we're going to have a really great show. For those of you who are new, just give me a couple of seconds while I share my screen. We are beyond excited to have you. We're in for a treat today. So I'm really excited to hear from our special guest. That said, my name is Lauren Simpson. I am with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. And they are at no cost to you because your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. So be sure to partake in our resources, our free resources. For the Los Angeles network, which is the network that I represent, we have locations throughout the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And you can see those centers represented on the map in front of you. Here's a deeper dive into what it is that we do. We offer no-cost business advising, and so you're able to sit one-on-one via Zoom, of course, now, with our guru of all numbers, Miss Lori Williams. You can also sit with experts in marketing and even social media marketing, as well as business planning, contracts, licensing, permitting, whatever it is that you need, we have resources for you. We also offer virtual trainings, much like the training that you have joined today. Again, all free. So please get in contact with us today. You can reach us by phone, 866-588-7232, or you can go online, smallbizla.org/new client. For those of you who have reached us outside of the areas the counties that we serve, you can go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. With that, Lori, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share. Quick
All right.
housekeeping. Please be sure to put all questions into the Q&A. Let's keep those questions on topic and put that into the Q&A. Oh, I'm looking at the Q&A, Lori. It looks like
Yep, I
Nancy
already
Lim is
put it in the
waiting.
chat. Yep, I put it in the chat. You guys will see. I just wrote it and put it in the chat.
Thank you very much. So Nancy Lim thought that was very cool information, just like I did, and I'm sure everyone else on. So thank you. And then the chat's going to be reserved for any links and information that we'd like to share with you. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Lori and sit back and get ready for a really great show.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. Yes, Nasalyn, I put that in the chat. And I also, guys, I told you about an app that you can download. Now, what this app is used is to actually connect certain antennas. That's why I'm familiar with it, because I have special antennas I use. But you could still download the free app. And at the bottom, you'll see a button that says Signal. It will give you the information. And all it is it's giving you a little chart. You can stick it in. So if you guys have more questions about it next week, I can take some screenshots. But that's the number that you bring in. Okay, so let's talk about upcoming shows. And also I wanted to give you guys especially the frequent flyers, there usually is a slide that says what seminars, what webinars I'm doing on finance and sales tax, etc. I'm kind of going dark for August. I'm going to have all of those start again in September, including the Financial Literacy 101, the 2 classes, and a sales tax class. So be ready. I'll be announcing that probably next week. I need to go ahead and get those books, so those classes will be coming up. And this is just a shout out. I always try to tell people the things I'm experiencing on a weekly basis, and I just want to make a quick note. Please, once again, and I always say this on the sales tax, if you are selling out of state, it is not a true statement that you don't have to charge sales tax. You may have to. So if you are selling out of state and you think you definitely don't have to charge sales tax, you want to hit me up or take my sales tax, and you want to learn about economic nexus. Wayfair versus South Dakota is what you want to Google. So you'll learn about it. Wayfair versus South Dakota and economic nexus to get up on that. That's a new rule that came into 2017, 2018. I'm finding a lot of people that are using Shopify. They don't understand that it's not remitting the sales tax. So a shout out. Also, I'm finding still a lot of people making mistakes where they incorporate and then they don't follow up with the proper tax documents, etc. I'm going to actually have a show that's going to come up where I'm going to talk about the different legal structures and the different tax forms that you must fill out. And we got a frequent flyer that's going to come and talk about her experience. But speaking of frequent flyer, our first one is Randy next week. Randy's a frequent flyer. Love having her on the show. Reached out to me to help her with an Excel document process. She wanted to have a better understanding of her numbers. We went through this entire process, and she's going to come on the show next week and just tell you what she learned during it. And then the next week, we're going to talk to LaRuth Wright. Now, LaRuth owns Diamond Funeral Services. I met her, I bet you it's been a decade ago, once again through the SBDC. What's interesting about this is that she literally uses partnerships to offer full range of funeral services. I was very intrigued when I first saw her business model, how it worked. First you think funeral services. Well, that's interesting. And the more I got to know LaRuth and how she built this business model and how she uses partnerships, it's an amazing story. So it's a good one to hear. And then the following week is Callie. Callie owns Art Mafia. She provides creative services to the entertainment industry. She's going to tell you all things about, from getting paid to getting the jobs to contracting, all the things that have to do with the entertainment industry. And then the week after that, our good friend Deborah Darris is going to come back, but we're not going to discuss social media. I know, with the guru of social media, we're not going to discuss social media. Well, some of you frequent flyers might remember that Deborah brought this up, so I'm blaming her. She pointed out that I am an NLP practitioner, which she is as well. She got that off my bio. And so we're going to have a whole discussion on mindset for business. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well. So that's what's coming up in the very near future. Okay, so for today, We got some really exciting things to discuss. Now, you guys that have been on the show, remember Ariel came on before. He is an advisor at the SBDC. And I'm just going to say on his bio is he specializes on all things sales and marketing. I'm going to let him go through a little bit of his background, but the cool part is that, and first of all, let me welcome Ariel, because we need a visual on this. Ariel, where are you? Come on the show. There he is.
Happy Wednesday. How are you?
So what's funny is I am going to ask Ariel those kind of questions that marketing people don't like to ask. These aren't the simple, we're going to talk marketing. What do you do? Social media. I got hard questions, and then I see him this morning. He's got the baseball cap on. So I'm going to pitch you some over there and see how you do. But Ariel, give us the 30 seconds, because you got an interesting background from your corporate background, et cetera, and I didn't want to miss anything. So why don't you, for those of them have not met you yet, I just acted like everybody knows and loves you. Give us a little introduction to your background and what you do.
Oh, great. So first of all, thank you for having me. Lori, it's always fun to be here for these types of events and kind of sharing the knowledge and experience that I was able to be blessed to be experienced with. So long story short, I'm a product of Southern California. I'm one of those core kids that was very engaged in that surf skate. I worked for some big brands in the action sports sector that allowed me to kind of really figure out how to strategically brand and message to a consumer, my consumer demographic, and really resonate messaging down to them to make sure that we were very engaged, to make sure that our product was what we call in our world had credit or had a lot of respect in that form, because it's one of those things that I'm learning is the more emotional attachment you have with a brand, the more longer types of consumers you have. So worked with big brands, then segued into owning my own business. So I took that knowledge in that corporate sector, took it to a small business, and was being able to elevate that and grow. And now that's where I'm at today, is in that, and then also having other businesses also. So long story short, a lot of marketing, a lot of messaging, and but it all boils down to it gets very narrow towards the bottom.
That's what I like about having you on the show too, is the fact that I always refer to myself as having left the tribe, the small business tribe, because I grew up in people that have been around, they're starting to get my history, but I grew up in a small little country town. I said I wasn't rural, I was podunk. Anybody else that's ever been in a podunk town, right? So yeah. I grew up with the mom and pops and everything like that. And then all my education and training, I went out and, was CFO for bigger companies, and then came back to what I call my little tribes, trying to help my little tribes. And there is a difference in a small business consultant who has left the small business world and came back in. They know things differently. It's not for the same. And I see it in finance and accounting and stuff. People that have always been the small business usually don't say everything correct. They don't get everything correct. So that's what I love, is that you bring the corporate, and you already brought a word that I love, and that's strategy. And so my whole focus today is to try to have something a little different than your everyday marketing conversation, where we do talk about strategy. And I'm going to just throw some really hard things at you. So here we go. We'll start out a little bit easy, okay? So when I hear marketing, we're going to start with this concept of what is the most popular types of marketing activities that everybody does, but what are those missing gems that people should be doing? How's that?
Okay. It's very, very broad.
I know. That's why I figured I'll narrow later, but I'm going to get you a little bit. Yeah. So, but really, I mean, there's certain missing gems, and they're not hearing because all the people that are speaking marketing, I hear them saying the exact same thing. So what I want out of you, say something different.
Yeah. So basically, you know what, when we talk about marketing, one of the biggest misses is understanding your consumer, understanding the consumer, who you're speaking to, because I'm going to start a clothing line, I'm going to start a company, and we're just going to go to the masses. I'm going to start a t-shirt line, and then you're going to talk to people at a concert in the park, and they don't really care. So the standard playbook is have a booth, give free swag, and kind of connect the dots, right?
Right.
But what they're failing to miss here is going to an event and connecting the dots, but at the same time, really connecting deep and dive. But the event you should go to should be very, I'd say, laser focused on who you're trying to sell to. So for example, if I like Filipino food, don't sell me steak, right? So give me the plethora of the Filipino food and tell me where is it. You get really deep, because what happens is, with the experience that yourself and myself have, we come from this big conglomerate of marketing. Now we bring it back. And I can honestly say the vision is lost because the smaller entrepreneurs don't see the big picture. Either one, they haven't been there, or two, they haven't been able to experience it. For us, we've seen the big picture. How do we scale it down? And that's why I think for us, we're able to build roadmaps. So when you look at being very connected and having that boilerplate, there's a lot of things in marketing boilerplate: social media, activation, trade shows, being present at events, yada, yada, yada. But when you boil it back, you have to know who you're speaking to. It all boils down to who you're speaking to. You know, if you don't know who you're speaking to, then your messaging is going to come off completely wrong. And unfortunately, blanket marketing works to a certain extent, but let's be real. This is the most active thing that we have right now. It's so fast. And if you stop swiping for a quick second on your Instagram and see something that's cool, then you got their attention, right? So
Right.
again, it's engaging, really direct messaging is what I think the smaller businesses fail to realize, because they're so small, they want to grow big, they want the masses. And then the bigger business are so big, they want to go to the small, because they know in the small realm is where the brand can really grow, or the message can go and get to another level.
You know, that's so true, because another thing I see ties into the finance. They have very limited marketing dollars, and so they spread them too thin across too many different platforms, and they don't get marketing concentration in any one thing, and they end up getting a tiny little result here, a tiny little result, but not enough sales at a high enough selling price to cover expenses, production, and have any net income. You know, that goes back into my world. So in fact, I had somebody the other day, they were saying, well, I'm selling things to animals, you know, dogs and stuff. So I'm going to go to the dog park and talk to some people. Well, that's great, but you're going to get maybe 2 people and spend 2 hours. Why not knock on a veterinarian's door instead? You know, so it's this concept that you have to also think about the efficiency in marketing dollars and time. And I just feel like people do that. It's an old time expression. If you throw enough spaghetti up against the wall, it'll stick. I don't know, am I showing my age with that? But
no, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's just, you know, there's so much information. Let's look 15, 20 years ago. Remember when the Super Bowl was on, everybody was looking for the Budweiser commercial, right? Everybody was engaged in the TV. Now, when you're watching Super Bowl, you're watching sports on TV, you're having the TV and you have your iPhone, and there's so much information coming at you from all angles, and everybody's trying to grab your attention. So creatively, as a business or as a brand, or as you know, you're trying to grab that attention for that split second to get that engagement, right? So it's a challenge, you know, like, and going back to financing and knowing the cost of goods and making your margins. I think we talked about this last time. I'm going to quote the past president of the Van Shoe Company. You know, he told us very early on, strategy. What's the definition of strategy? The intelligent allocation of insufficient funds. So I'll quote Doug Palladini all day long on that. You know, he's a genius in marketing. You know, and but it's one of those things where when you say that some of these companies aren't able to make their margins because they're not really thinking it through. You know, and it's hard for an entrepreneur to know their business because they're going through it. You went through it. I went through it. Then you get to a corporate sector where it's like, okay, I messed up. Cool. It's on the big company. But at the same time, when it boils down to it, know your business, know your audience, and understand the business. And if not, find the resources to learn the business around you. You know, I always surround myself by smarter people because I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room, because how are you always going to engage and learn, right?
Yeah, completely true. You know, so here's another topic that I thought we would go to. And this one I experienced myself, and a lot of companies experience. So I'll tell you a little story with it. You know, with most of our companies that we deal with, especially the SBDC, the company owner is the owner is the salesperson, is the marketer, is the finance person. We get where we're going there, right? So the time that they have to do things is so small. So I can recall back, I'm going back some decades when I was really active marketing my consulting firm. I realized that I would go to these networking meetings and hand out a bunch of cards. They took forever to drive. They took forever to hand out the cards, on and on and on and on, right? So I started, in fact, it's funny because now that I'm telling the story, it's some years ago, and Jack Welch was very popular. So that tells you how many years ago, right? And he had this strategy for his divisions that he would go in, and those activities that were not profitable or at the top of the list, he would cut, right? So I said, okay, how do I get to the top of the list? And then it dawned on me, well, I sell intellect. I can give intellect samples. I can be a public speaker. And I started contacting all of the business organizations. And I said, I'm only going to a networking meeting if I'm the speaker. That way I can get my business card in everybody's hands versus the few I can meet. Now, I'm not saying that was like a strategy that can be applied to all, but that was a way I came up with the concept that I had to own the room or I had to not be there. And he had the concept of you have to own the industry or not be in it. So the question comes, how, when you are the chief bottle washer, the chef, you know, all those things, that old expression I just killed, do you get efficient with your few scarce marketing dollars and time? And then another one I want to put on this, stay consistent. So when you get a client, you're busy, you still have the marketing wheel turning. Take that one away and give us some thoughts.
You just put all facts on the table. You know, when you are a small entrepreneur, you do everything, and you have to understand that going in. You can't, if you can't get to the, if launching a business and you can't understand that you are everything out of the gate right now, then you're going to have a struggle out of the gate. You have to be really okay with that. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable in taking those roles on, even if you don't know it, but it has to be done for your business. You know, going back to the business card thing, like in marketing, people think, so you're a company, you have an event, it's awesome. You have you're a small entrepreneur, you're launching a business, you're having a big event, everybody's there, it's a party. Alcohol's fine, there's music, there's dancing, but what you're failing to realize is instead of you going to the, sorry, my dog's barking. Instead of you going to these events and marketing your business, you're bringing everybody to you. You have to understand that party is work. You need to touch every person that walks in that door and leave them some type of engaging piece to where you need to connect the dots in there, you know? So it's one of those things where you go back to kind of like you always say, like Jack Welch, like there's things that have been done in the past, and all we're doing is evolving what they started, right? It's an evolution of the next level, you know, like your business card conversation. You know, I rarely pass business cards out now because I use my blink. It's like scan my kid, but when you're scanning someone's scanning my phone and my information is going right into their phone, we're having an engaging conversation. So I'd much rather have 5 strong engaging conversations than 20 business cards are out. But so I'm not saying the old way was wrong. I think it's just evolving into a newer way to get deeper engaging, because it seems like people now are a little bit more in tune in what their expectations are in being consistent and relaying their message out. Did that answer that?
It did. Now I got a new question, but before I do, we got a question. They want you to repeat the insufficient funds and go slow so Lauren can stick that in the chat. Can you? So Lauren, get ready to capture
Correct.
it. Go.
Okay. The definition of strategy that I learned in the sector of business I was in was the intelligent allocation of insufficient funds. So when you look at your marketing budget and you have a spend of $50,000, but you only have $2,000, how do you strategically get your message across in making all that happen? That's the challenge here. You know, I'll tell you based on experience, when I was in brand marketing for a big company, you know, video was on the way up and print was on the way down, but print was so standard in the industry. You know, we were the forward thinkers in that game, to where we had to make adjustments. You know, I spent less on print and went more on video content back then because I saw that's what the kids were doing. That's how I can get my message out. So again, you know, Nope. Nobody has the unlimited marketing budget like some of these companies do. And when they do have an unlimited marketing budget, it's still marketing, this open-ended funnel that will never, you can always spend and never stop. So just understand, like, if you boil down resonating your message to your consumer and speak that language, like, I love to surf. I speak the surf language to the core. So when somebody speaks to me in that language, I completely understand it. Right. So if that makes sense, depending on what if you're a cook, if you're manufacturing, or if you're in design, if you're in design, you speak Illustrator, you speak Photoshop, you speak InDesign. And if you speak that language, then you tend to connect a little bit deeper on things.
That was perfect because you led into the next question I have. Okay, so here's the next topic. We're going through all these topics and just having conversation around it. So
Yeah.
it's the word messaging. So with messaging, back in the olden days and in all the bigger companies, you spend a lot of time on messaging, a lot. You hire people to come in and work with you on messaging, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Messaging within the small companies isn't given any time. And if they do, they really don't comprehend what it is. I have some people where I'll ask them what they do. And at the end, I'm like, I have no idea in hell
Yeah.
what you just said. Or they create the messaging all about them. So, Ariel, how about taking us back to some textbook 101 of what you ask, how you go about determining the messaging for your product or service? Let's go back and get the roots of that concept.
Let's bring it back to the party concept. Who,
Yep.
what, when, why? Who are you? Why are you here, and when, right? It's one of those things where if you can answer those questions, because let's be honest here, once you have this momentum going in your brain goes in 20 different directions, and then and you tend to don't write things down, or you're just so excited, and it's natural to have that, so it's a roadmap that you need to go through. So if you can ask those questions, who, what, when, why, then you can kind of see who you're relating to your message to. Because to me, messaging is the most important thing, because, like, if we were sitting here talking about cooking, I'm like, okay, but we're sitting about marketing. I love marketing. I'm very passionate about marketing. We speak the same language. We can connect the dots. We can open up this type of thinking where we can create new things. And messaging is so key. Just here's a great example. When you were younger, your parents told you no because you're young, you don't know. That was their message. But when you got older, you understood why it was no. No, you don't want to jump off that because you're going to get hurt, or you jumped off it and you got hurt. So it's kind of like when you boil down to growing up or anything you do, it's one of those things, and you have to relate that to your brand or your company. Like, you have to relay your messaging. You have to speak that language, because if you don't, you're just speaking into this gray area where people will sometimes listen to you or maybe not listen to you. But if you speak the language, you're going to have a small demographic that will listen to you. And then as you engage that demographic, the demographic will get bigger, because the content you'll be producing will be more around that realm. And then it's like a bullseye, right? You message into the middle dot and it makes sense. You get to the next ring, and the more rings you get out, the more your brand gets out there. So to me, messaging is the most important thing out there, because it's like being somewhere where you don't want to be. Like, here, I'll be honest here. My parents tried to lead me into the medical industry. The message was, you have a great job, you're going to be medical insurance, you're good, you're working forever. But it wasn't my DNA, my personality. The pressure, the entrepreneur, the hustle, the grind, that's me. I'm just like, it was but the message was, now I'm doing somewhat making a living doing all this now, and it's working. I'm having fun. Every day is different. It's moving parts all the time. This is me, I just drag my family with me. They just got to come along for the ride. They have no choice. But it's, what I mean? It's one of those things. It's so important that you have to relay correct message, because when I was going to medical classes, it didn't make sense. I slept. But when I was in business classes, boom, my eyes were wide open. I'm just like, give me more, or I need to connect with that person because it resonated with me. So just think, when you're selling your product or your business, you want that type of engagement.
Oh, I got two things that just were making me laugh inside that I got to share. So the first one is, we got a familiar, similar situation. So I always say that I grew up in the country, and so when I was like 12, I had to pick beans and work on a farm. Right. My much older sister, 13, went in to become a lab technician. And so I was told the messaging when I was a kid, either
Yeah.
you can go to school and become a lab technician or pick beans on the farm. So
Yeah.
needless to say, I have a 2-year associate's degree in biology and science, which I did for 1 year and went, oh my God, I can't stand blood. I don't care that people are dying. It's not my personality. And then I later went back to business. So I had to share that. But it's funny on the messaging. So when I was doing the big turnaround, and I think I mentioned this last time, I would always say to fellow CFOs, I can help you understand your profit margins. We can look at the financial performance and health of the company, common language. When I went into my business Simply Put, which was more to the smaller startup companies, if I said to them, well, you need to understand your profitability, they're like, yeah, I kind of get it. It wasn't until I changed my at then on-site seminars to this. Do you lay awake at night worrying your company's going to fail? Come learn the numbers ahead of time. And what I did with the messaging is I realized I was selling to myself and I was not my client or customer.
Correct.
I had to get to the client or customer and say, well, what do they understand? I'm telling you, Ariel, the minute I changed that headline, my class intake just tripled in size.
Absolutely. It makes complete sense because you're resonating something that they can relate to. This is like when you get down to, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but when you get to that mental psyche of connecting the dots where that little spark and that synapse goes off on relatability, gone. And I'm assuming that's probably what happened here. They connected the dots,
And they're always, not to be on the negative side, but the fact is fear is a motivator to do things or to avoid fear. That's a big, on the psychology, right? And so I played into a bit because I said, are you afraid your company's going to fail? Knowing every single company that starts out is afraid of that. But I also knew that I could provide them a solution, which was to better manage the financials. There was this old joke all the time about, the person that says, hey, if you give me 2 seconds, I've got the greatest thing that'll solve your business. And then here's 2 seconds. Well, no, but I got your attention. That old joke, you don't have anything to offer afterwards. I think I killed it, but it's something along that joke.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So now we're going to go down a different pathway, but I do want to invite anyone in the audience, if you got any questions, this is throw Ariel hard questions. So if you even got a specific one, you throw it in the Q&A. I'm watching the Q&A, not the chat. Throw it in the Q&A. Ariel's up for this. He's got his baseball cap. He's ready to go. Okay, so here's where we're going to go next on this. And this is I always have a story, right? So now I have a very old author. This is an old author I'm going to use to introduce the story. Many people probably haven't heard of him. I think you might. Og Mandino.
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Okay, I thought you might. So in the day, guys, I'm old, remember, but in the day, Og Mandino was the go-to sales book, right? Yeah. So I'm in my 20s, learning to be a good salesperson, reading Og Mandino, and I'm going to really shorten the story. But he talked about this salesperson who is failing. He's not making money. His kids don't have any food. And his boss says, you make this one last sale, and if you don't, you're out of here. So he goes to, it's an old book, a Denny's, and has a cup of coffee, right? So he goes to Denny's and he has this cup of coffee. It's the last call for the day. He's totally afraid to go, right? He drives into the parking lot and he's sitting in the parking lot and he notices that they're unloading something at the warehouse. He notices that what they're unloading, the company wouldn't have to buy if they bought his widget. They wouldn't have to pay for this money. So as the story goes in the Og Mandino book, is suddenly he fumbles quickly to get his briefcase together, not out of fear, but out of excitement, as he goes nuts on the door and he opens the door and says to the president, you got to meet me right now. I've got what you need to buy. And he meets with the president and he tells him, and the president buys, but it was not his biggest sale ever, but it was his biggest sale because that day he sold himself on himself. as
Correct.
a salesperson
Yeah.
offering solutions. Ariel, that's my advice to the non-salesperson out there that suddenly has to be the salesperson for their business. You're up. How do you advise the non-salesperson on this call that suddenly has to sell their services or widgets? Mendino, Ariel. Sorry, I had a little bit of leeway on that one, so you got thrown it on a bat there. So go at it.
No, I mean, let's just proof is in the pudding, right? Everything in life is sales growing up, right? So you're already born a born salesman because you practice your athletics to get better, to get on the varsity team. You're in school to get good grades. You have to prove to yourself. You have to graduate, let's say high school and college, to get a degree, to get a job. You want to promote yourself in a company, so you have to kind of keep pressing and doing good to get to the next level. You're always selling yourself no matter what, so you're already in sales. So it's one of those things that the question is, do you understand that part? I can honestly say at the first onset of going to be an entrepreneur, I wasn't a fan of talking about myself. But what I found out for myself was, I'm not sitting here bragging, talking about myself. I'm sharing my story and my experiences because people or kids can relate. Now, once I figured that part out, it was different. My mindset changed, right? And as an entrepreneur, as someone starting a business, you need to be okay being uncomfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because if you can do that, then nothing's ever going to be uncomfortable for you. And you have to go with that mentality. At one point in time, like my parents are very reserved, right? But at one point in time, you have to get that, what, I'm on. Like, it's either black or white. I'm either doing it or I'm not. To me, the biggest part of being an entrepreneur is taking that first step mentally to say, I'm going to do this. Because when you say, I want to do this, I'm thinking about it, you haven't jumped off the cliff. Right. There's this great video out there on YouTube from Steve Harvey saying that he was coming out of his show. He was getting in his car. And then he said, there's an example of jumping off a cliff without a parachute, right? And then you're going to be bouncing off the cliff and hitting the walls and all that. And he said, you're going to see people with their parachutes open, which is like the vacations, the expensive watches, the Escalades, the lot of materialistic things. He goes, eventually your parachute is going to open, but it's going to take a little bit of time. So once you mentally get to the point of saying, hey, I'm doing this, what's my next step? You've already leaped into this world of being an entrepreneur, because now your mind is thinking consistently about it. So it's one of those things where you have to and I'll be honest, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Sometimes the day-to-day organizations of going in 9 to 5 is good, but that's not for everybody either. So you have to really dig deep and kind of figure it out. Like for me, being an entrepreneur, I sold myself, and I got to sell my family. You have to make it work, right? And there's a lot of moving parts to this thing. But once you take that leap and you have that momentum, it won't stop, because you're so focused on the end game of getting where you want to go. You've probably gone further than you'd expected to go back. And unfortunately, sometimes entrepreneurs, the strong entrepreneurs, don't look back. They just keep building these building blocks all the way. The ones that kind of regress and go back and go backwards, it maybe wasn't for them. And it's okay. It's okay. And you have to understand that. I tell people this all the time when I talk about launching businesses. I said, you know what? You're here right now. Either you do it or you don't. You're going to go back to work at 9 to 5 and you're going to have a job. You do this, it's super successful, and you have this awesome idea that you wanted to launch, and you're doing it. You're having fun. You have more time. You have less time, whatever. And then it goes. You're good. But if the thing fails, who cares? You go back to work. Like, it's okay to fail. You don't win every game. You don't be the first to pick for every sport. It's okay to fail in this, then you go back to work, or your failure makes you readjust your company to make sure it doesn't happen again. So for me, this whole, the thought of saying, you know what, I'm doing this, and you just, boom, push the green light, you're gone. That's the biggest hurdle for me, because that's people don't understand, like, you know, when I became an entrepreneur, I'm like, yeah, I can surf more, I can hang out, I can do this. But no one told me it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it doesn't stop. And then there's stresses, and then there's finances, and there's cost of goods sold, and you got to sell, and you got to collect payments. Oh my God. Oh, but I'm the type of person, your back's against the wall. You just love that pressure, just create things and make things happen. And then you start tapping it. You being uncomfortable makes you tap in and to other resources and ask the hard questions. Hey man, I need help with this. Can you help me? Oh yeah, I got you. Let's do this. And then more doors open. And then the doors get wider and wider, right? It's just one of those things where, like, I'm a person of pressure. You like the pressure, you go, you make it happen and you fix it and you go bigger. Right. So
I love that. I
yeah.
love that. You know, I think there's so much truth to that. And there's nothing wrong with somebody not wanting to be entrepreneur
No.
and nothing wrong with somebody wanting to be entrepreneur, but it's an understanding of what it takes. And once again, your conversation made me think of so many things. I can remember, once again, going back to my 20s and 30s, you know, when things were really challenging. And I rewrote the definition of a success and failure, because at the time I was doing a lot of cold calls during the day, right? I would
Yeah.
go home, I'd done all this work, but I didn't get any clients. So I felt like I failed, right? So I said,
Yeah.
okay, for me to succeed, all I have to do is have tried. And for me to have failed, I didn't try. And that was something I could hang my hat on. And then I started this thing where I wrote it above the door. So I would look at it at the time. I said, success is intelligence times effort or action, because there was a mixture. If you just run like crazy and you don't stop and think what you're doing and think about cost of goods and finance and all that, you can be running the wrong direction. So it's that combination of being very, very intelligent about what you're doing, stepping back, seeing what's happening, and then going and take those actions once again. And I think that's absolutely correct about sales. And I love how you started off talking about we're all salespeople. I used to
Yeah.
teach a sales class, once again, many decades ago, and I would say, it's the ultimate, which Lauren can comment. I bet your kids do really good at selling themselves when you say no, right? And so
Yeah.
as kids, they say no, and you go, but why not? But why not? Well, when can I? Can I after 5? Can I after I eat my dinner? When can
Yeah.
I? You know, we were great because we were just so strong on what we wanted, and we didn't take barriers. And so you take that childlike, you know, behavior, and you take it with an adult intelligence, and you've got a good salesperson in any situation. And if you look at it too, from what we've even discussed so far, you take the appropriate messaging, you take the actions, the attitude, you then go after it and become the salesperson and accept that you're going to do all this. You follow through in all these events. I mean, already we have given quite an underlining recipe. I love that where this is going.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting question, and Landra may need to give us a little bit more, but I'll read it to you as she wrote it. What are productive ways to plan during an industry seasonal break? And I think that's probably enough to run with. It's a very good question, and that could be towards any break. Well, how do you plan?
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like a reset, right? Well, not a reset. I'm sorry. So you have to know where you're going first of all and know what's happened. And to me, if you had a season, go back to that season and cherry pick the goods and the bads or what you want to improve on. It's like a review. Go back and review what you worked on, what didn't work or what worked, but don't focus on the what didn't work as much, but focus on the more creative aspects of what can I do differently that everybody else is doing. Because like in any business, you know, planning is the most crucial part of anything, like the forecasting, the buying, and your finances. But I don't know if you're looking at, when you look at your seasonal business, are you looking at from a financial aspect? Are you looking at from a marketing aspect or a business aspect? But let's just go with the bigger overarching business aspect. You have to look at what didn't work. And if it didn't work, why didn't it work? And it's okay, it didn't work. Then you move on and say, okay, this didn't work because of this, but we can fix this to do this. So the next round, for whatever it is that you're doing, you can address that issue. But it's an open-ended question. I mean, in marketing, I can talk all day long on why it didn't work in marketing and how it can move forward. But legitimately enough, go back to what and digest and decompress what happened. And if what you personally feel that should have happened didn't happen, but you still want it to happen, then focus on that. You have to make your adjustments. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like being a politician or being on council. You know, all 5 of you don't agree on things, but you kind of have to agree to disagree. You know, you have to, with your team or yourself, sometimes it's mostly yourself if you're an entrepreneur, to disagree internally and say, this doesn't work, or you don't want to hear this answer, and move forward. But you have to you just can't keep going and going and going, even though you're not doing any review behind of what you've done, because you could be spinning your wheels and spending money in the wrong direction. And when you start looking at strategy, you know, you have to be intelligent in this allocation of, in this time, it could be time versus money. I don't know. But if it's time, you need to spend time. Okay, this worked. How do we move forward for making this work? Oh, you know what? This is what we need to focus on, because this is what everybody wants. And you could have found $1 million idea, right? So,
you know, what I learned over, and you know, I was gonna say, don't even get me started with the arguments with myself. I'd rather argue with an entire group than with myself. That usually is multiplied by an entire country by the time I'm done. But you know, one of the things that I was thinking of while you were speaking, and I fell upon this by chance. So I'll tell you what it is and how I fell upon it. And I have now taken this and say, this is advice to anybody. I'll tell you, if you've been historically in business and if you're a startup, how I would apply it. So if you've been in business, take any of the customers that you have, and if you have a long list, first sort them by your top customers financially. Who you got your top sales from? I like to look at profit margins as well, but we're going to stick to the marketing aspect of this. So I'll tell you how it came about, what the next advice I'm going to tell you. During my turnaround days, I remember I would always go into companies, you know, they're in financial trouble. So marketing budgets were really a concern for me. I didn't want to take away a marketing budget because it could be the only thing bringing in new clients, but I didn't want to spend money that wasn't being spent. And all of a sudden I'm coming in day one. And if you ask the owners, there is no problems, everything's working. And then you have to go, then why am I here? You know, that's the way it is. So you can't really trust their opinion. And I came up with this as a consultant. I would say, everybody's lying to me. I just got to figure out how much. Now, first of all, I didn't mean they were lying to me. They were saying what they believed to be true, but in reality may not. So here's where we go with this. I started running these results to see their top customers. I was looking for concentration of receivables. You know, do they have only a few customers, many customers? But then what I did is I took that exact same list, and this one company was just amazing and it's a greatest example because they told me that they'd been spending $40,000 a year on trade shows, and we had to, or they weren't going to get any business, right? So I'm like, well, that's a lot, but whatever. So I take the same list and I went to every single person within that company. There was about 15, from the customer service to the people in production to the owners to the managers, and asked them with the list of the top 20, one by one, where did that customer come from? Where did that customer come from? And I kept getting different answers. So I kept researching, right? And I kept looking for trade show. And they didn't come from trade shows. One of the customers came from a trade show 10 years ago, right? And so here I quit the whole 40,000. We never did a trade show and sales didn't change. So that's how it came about. But what it made me realize, and I have done it a million times since, is that the owners don't realize, or they have a false belief often of where they're really getting their customers. It may have been here, but did the email then get it? Did this get it? Did that get it? So taking a review of who your customers have been, and then being very detailed in the memory blanks of where they came from. How did you first meet them? Was it a referral? Call that referral. Was it a pop-up store? Call that pop-up. What area? Inspect everything and look for commonalities. Look for what is similar. Is it all referrals? Is it all that? And then build a strategy. Like I had a client that did architecture, and of all the strange things, their business slumped suddenly because their kids were out of school and they weren't at the parent conferences. And they didn't even pick up on that. But literally, they're like, because they did home architecture, right? So they're like, oh, we got this person at the parent conference and this. So I always say, go back in and really say, how did we first become aware and what caused them to buy from us? And that is one of the key aspects that I just kind of stumbled upon.
Yeah. I mean, knowing your consumer demographic is a very big part, because like anything, nothing's forever. Everything has to, I don't like the word change. It has to evolve, and going back to a trade show comment. Yeah, I remember the days of the big trade shows and the $100,000 spends. And then what do you mean there's $60,000 on drayage just to ship your stuff in and paying the union guys, which I am not opposed to. But then again, I see a lot of these smaller brands. I saw the shift in the industry from big trade show booths to going to smaller trade show booths, but very well connected in their messaging. Like back in the days, everybody used to be at the big trade shows booth because it was cool. But it seemed like the demographic of people, especially in the apparel and footwear sector, I saw the cooler brands get cooler and had more following because they were able to resonate messages down. Because to me, what I saw in the apparel industry was the bigger brands became very mainstream, and the cool kids didn't want to wear the mainstream things. They wanted that individualized. They want to be very not, I wouldn't say polarized, but maybe more, they want to have this identity of themselves. I mean, only like the brands that they can relate with. So it's one of those things of, yes, understanding where the history of this all came from, but also understand, like, you have to, like, I'll be honest, I watch TikTok, I'm on Instagram, because I have to see what these kids are doing. And I'll be honest, I lurk, but the coolest thing, like, on Instagram is you can lurk. People's photography angles are amazing. That's a great idea. How'd you do that? Turn the iPhone upside down to get a perspective so you don't look as big. It's mind blowing how much information is out there. And now with marketing, I mean, before you launch a business, you can find your demographic a lot faster. So back then, the trade show booths would have to attract certain types of consumers that your brand related to. Now, you can go on any type of social platform and find out these communities, these forums, these blogs, and have those strong conversations. So when you do launch, you're already, let's just say, 10 miles ahead because you did your research, right? So
Ariel,
yes.
that is really interesting. And I never put that together because, back in the olden days, we would spend tons of
Yeah.
money on surveys to try to get to know the habits and behaviors of a customer base,
Yep.
right? And I mean, tons of money. We would get the focus groups. We were paying all this money. Now, all you got to do, especially, find the platform they're on, whatever social media is aligned with your age group or association or something, and just look at their photos, and you're picking up behavior 101. I never even considered that, but you're absolutely right. Just watching your customer, what they're doing.
Think about the hashtag, this hashtag movement, like hashtag cool cars. I mean, my gosh, you're going to get everybody globally that's hashtagging this, and your research is at your fingertips as a swipe. You don't have to. Remember, we had to go to the library to do research.
Yes, I
hated that. Oh my God, I hated in college going to libraries. The worst. I did not. But now, like, I love researching because you can get deeper. You have more reach, and accessibility is even more. It's just like, I mean, it's just crazy what's already out there for us as information to do what we need to do,
Yep. On my private side of my business, where I'm going after just the general public, but still finance and stuff, I Google things that I wouldn't say, like, how do I know what tax forms I have to fill out? And then I'll see who is responding and how they're marketing to them, right? Or I'll Google something like, how do I know if my company is going to make it? Or what's the 5 top things I should do to start a business? Then I see what videos come up, and I see how they're presenting it. And then I get titles and names from my own. And I'm getting ready to do some of my classes on, like, Udemy and stuff. So I'm looking at, well, what if I wanted to take a class on finance? But you're so correct on that. Speaking of the trade shows and everything, this is something, I hadn't thought of talking about, but this concept of the pop-ups. Now I'm seeing that the pop-ups are really helping people to focus on both the type, because there's like clothing pop-ups and stuff, also the geography. I find that they're a little bit more of a cost prohibitive unless you sell enough in that day, because they're not like cheap to go be in a pop-up. But a pop-up seems to be the greatest little trade shows for today. What's your experience with the pop-up concept being a good tool for companies?
I love the pop-up concept. I mean, just think of your mental psyche of registering for a pop-up, and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You've gone over that hump already. You're gonna do this. Now, the next question is your pop-up going to be something that like would be the next widget or the next thing that the best offering? But I love the pop-up concept. They're very boutique-y, they're small. It allows this community to come together. There's a lot of support within each other. You know, back in the days, it's my brand versus your brand. Now we have to have this collective tie with each other to help grow businesses, because it just seems to me that in the boutique business or the pop-up business, rising tides raises all ships, right? Like if our boutiques do good, then we all do good because we're getting exposure. And it's more of you're putting 20 different companies that are non-endemic to each other together to expose yourself. So I could sit my business next to a candle business and a food business. Now I'm getting exposure from these two other people at a smaller venue and being able to connect the dots and have a stronger conversation. Because when we started this conversation, it was all about messaging. How do you get the message out? I mean, if I can hear from the owner the true ideal message on why they are starting this business, you will spend money. Trust me, it happens to all of us. Sometimes I'm going to pay $20 for a candle because Mrs. Jones pours it in her backyard and she uses all this I don't know, vegetables, and it smells like surf wax and it makes me feel like I'm in like Tahiti or something. And yes, it's a $5 candle, but I'm engaged. And that's where you have that in that pop-up sector, because you're going to have the people that are going to like you, that are not going to like you. You're going to have the discernment of your business not selling a lot, but you're going to have to push forward through. There's a lot of things that could come up with a pop-up in your internal psyche that can help grow your business, because it's a process. You have to get there. You have to set up. You have to sell. You have to clean up. You have to go home, and you go home and you're tired, like, wow, how would that? Okay, when's the next one? Let's go. Then you start fixing like going back to reviewing, like the seasonal business we're talking about, going back to reviewing what worked at that pop up. What do I need to do forward? You know, we don't need to bring all these bins. There's too many things to take out. You know, we just need, we just need a few of them. So I think boutiques and pop-ups are amazing. I love how they've evolved. I think they're a lot easier, they're a lot faster. And I think you can get to a lot of people at a smaller scale with less expense, but also expand your brand to other sectors a lot faster. So for example, you go to the mall, you're just going to see the big franchise businesses. You go to the swap meet or a pop-up, you're going to see a little bit more of the cooler boutiques and a little bit more of the cooler things, right? So I'm a fan of pop-ups. I love pop-ups. We were able to start one here at our local YMCA in Lakewood, and it's amazing. It has great momentum. And ideally, the pop-up was to kind of bring more people on the property, you know, and it's amazing. I love them. I'm a super
Well, you
fan.
know, and it's really, like you said, the word evolved. I remember when there was just, you know, a good 10 years ago, there was just a few pop-ups here and there. They were very clothing specific.
Yeah.
Now, more businesses that I speak to for finance reason, they say, well, we first did a pop-up and then we learned a lot. Then we went here. So I'm saying pop-ups are the originator. And also, I know some people that got into bigger department stores who use pop-up to test new products even. So pop-ups seem to have this whole new wave.
Yeah.
So I don't know this, Ariel, and you may not either, because I don't go around finding pop-up. How does someone find all these pop-ups? Do you just Google pop-up? Is anybody doing a pop-up marketing list of all the available pop-ups? How does it, like, if everybody on this show wanted to say, hey, let me see if there's a pop-up in my area, what would they do? Would they just Google?
Yeah, I Google everything. Google, YouTube, everything.
Pop up, the word pop-up.
Pop-up boutiques, local, and then what's going to happen is you're going to probably get in touch with a curator, and then usually that curator that manages those pop-ups, meaning the curator is the one that brings everybody in, whether it's food, the business, you're going to probably reach them, and they probably run 4 different pop-ups already. So now your one pop-up turned into 4 different pop-ups. So yeah, the information is all out there. There's so much, especially we're in Southern California here, you know, during the summer, there's so many pop-ups, there's so many small venues, you know, whether it's fruits and vegetables on Sunday morning at the farmer's market, you know, it's what they're out there. The
Yeah,
information's
they're
out there. Yeah.
accessible. I've been starting to, speak more on them. So
Yeah.
we got 1 minute left. I'm gonna throw one last comment to you, one last question. Just in general, for me in finance, I could say that probably 60% of the people contact me and ask the same question.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in marketing, you either get the same question or the same situation. What is the common thing that most people ask you, and what's the first couple sentences you give them as an answer?
I don't think there's not, in marketing for me, there's no one common question. It's more of they want an answer for marketing to elevate their business. So that they want an answer that's possibly not there, right? Because they say, what am I going to do in marketing that's going to make this all work? There's not one answer. And unfortunately enough, if you understand that, and then you have to understand like marketing is across how many sectors. You got your web, your print, and your community development. There's so many different aspects of that. But for me, when I speak to my clients, it's more of, what is your messaging? Who do you want to talk to? I come out because they say, okay, you're going to be my marketing guy. What I got to do? I'm like, okay. Then I ask the question, who's your message? What's your message? And who are you talking to? Then the conversation starts to go different. And then that's
perfect, because I set
Yeah.
you up to then tell Lauren how people can get in touch with you to make
Yeah.
an appointment to ask any marketing questions.
Absolutely.
So, Lauren, I'm going to
Please,
turn
yes.
this back over to you. Let's find out in the chat what Ariel wants us to do, whether contact you or contact him. But I want to say that this has been a fantastic conversation. I got to say, it wasn't your typical marketing conversation. He hit home runs. He tackled all the questions, and I'm hoping that you in the audience got some little tidbits of info and a different look at marketing and social media than you are in other platforms. So Lauren, let me bring you back, and let's get Ariel's information in the chat if you hadn't already, so people know how to get in touch with him as well as myself.
Okay, we'll do. I'll take
Okay.
care of that right now.
My off.
Are you you got how to get in touch with Ariel?
Oh,
You're
I'm sorry.
good on
Oh,
that?
yeah, just the SBDC information is all there. That's
Yeah,
everything there.
you got that.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect. As long as you got it. Ariel, love having you on the show. Love
my
your
God.
energy. So much fun. We're going to be
Thank
tracking you down every quarter or so to have another conversation. You hit home runs today. Thank you for answering my questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. The service that you guys are doing is amazing. Thank you for connecting the dots. It's you guys sharing this information that allows all of us to kind of have fun in this world, right?
And please tell everybody you know about our show. We're looking to increase our attendance. I'll make sure you get the small business link and, say, here's some marketing advice. And my first marketing advice is to listen to Lori's show. How's that, Lauren? Was that some marketing?
That's it. One community, one family. Rising tides raises all ships. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Oh, Lauren, I'm going to leave it up to you now. I think the chat is going crazy, man. I just noticed, I never look at the chat, but man, it is going crazy. So that was a fun conversation, as all about a little bit of everything. So once again, thank you to your frequent flyers, especially during the month of August. You're on summer vacation and you're still tuning in. That means a lot. So Lauren, I know you're going to hang back for a little bit to get any information needed. Anybody want to get in touch with me? Or if you want to come on the show, somebody else that wants to come on the show, has a story to tell. And remember, especially you guys that are frequent flyer, this isn't all about success. It's also what I tried, what I failed. In fact, as coming up, like I said, we're going to have a couple people coming in and they're going to talk about what I learned that you shouldn't do and how I messed myself up. So this is a show from fellow peers to fellow peers about the good, bad, the ugly, and the funny. Okay, Lauren, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lori. Thank you. And thank you to all of you who joined us today. I was sure to add the YouTube link, so it's in the chat, as well as the sign up link for the show. So if you know anyone, or if you would like to come on the show or have a topic that you'd like us to discuss, please fill out that form for us. We'd love to hear your feedback. And then again, to reach out to Lori directly, go ahead and shoot me an email. My email is in the chat and we'll get you two connected. So with that, thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of I see your question, Rick, I'm sorry. Let me add that one more time. This is that link that I'm speaking to, and that is the form. So go ahead and click that link. Oh, let's see. Here is the link. I'm adding it right now. My apologies. So that you can go ahead and hopefully be on the show, or if you have a topic that you would like to suggest, we'd love to hear from you. So with that, thank you for joining us again for another episode of Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Take care. Bye.